All right. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to PubKey. Woo! I hope everybody in the audience has survived this. If you haven't, there's absolutely no shame in that. This is going to be a hard one to navigate, but we got amazing experts that are going to tell us what happened, surmise why it happened. I think that's still sort of like playing out. The efforts to mitigate the damage, both to individuals that have had their funds stolen, and also really harden the network. It's a really beautiful thing that's happening with Red Team. So let's welcome everybody to the stage. We've got Antoine and Matt Corallo from Chain Code Labs. I'm sorry, Spiral and Chain Code. So sorry about that. Alex Storm from Galaxy, and at some point, are you guys familiar with the Red Team? What the Red Team's been doing? So there's been kind of like an Avengers situation amongst Bitcoin core developers and engineers and other folks coming together. We'll have Rob Hamilton, potentially Calais, potentially James O'Byrne pipe in virtually to give us a rundown on what they've been working on. But Alex, where do you want to begin with this? As always, this is meant to be a tavern chat. So if we use a technical term of art that you don't quite understand, or if you want to double click on an issue or ask a question that we are not addressing, at any time, feel free to raise your hand. I'll pass you a microphone. We are live streaming, just so that everybody's aware of that.
Hello, world.
And we'll kick it off. Why don't we start with what happened? Who wants to give sort of an overview of the exploit in the moment? So this happened about seven days ago. I was actually in DC. We were hosting an event with the SEC chair, the CFTC chair, Hester Peirce. Thank you to Galaxy and Alex for putting that on and having it at PubKey DC. But
great PubKey, by the way. I think it's a phenomenal, and you guys did a great job. That was an awesome space.
It's not the original, though. The original.
It's not the original, but it is a great PubKey.
They're all great PubKeys. But yeah, the news was starting to break a couple hours before this event, and it was a hair-on-fire emergency, I think, right around the event was kicking off.
It's really hard. We were there. We had all these political people. We're trying to advance the Clarity Act. That's why we were like, oh, they're all tired and it's hot. Let's throw a cocktail hour and just literally invite like every policymaker, every Bitcoin and crypto policy person, right? We co-hosted with Coinbase and BPI, CCI, and Coin Center. And right before, like an hour before, we were like sitting downstairs in the PubKey in DC. If you haven't been, you should go. It's twice as big as this upstairs, maybe more.
Six times the size.
6 times the size. It's awesome. And there's a as yet not opened like speakeasy space in the basement. That's also very cool. And
that's where we get Clarity passed.
And we were sitting down there before. I won't name the Bitcoiner because I don't name Bitcoiners publicly unless they want me to. But one of the Bitcoiners that was there said there's like possibly a rumor of a Coldcard vulnerability at like 5 o'clock. This person ended up, although they were there for our party, could not participate in the party. They spent, I don't know what they did off in the corner. Maybe it was their own coins. Maybe they're helping people. Who knows what. We had to like play host, so we didn't get to like work on this.
Well, also at the time, it was unclear if it was isolated to Coldcard.
That's right.
Right. If this was a vulnerability that reached Trezor, Ledger, that was a bit of a panic moment. I kept looking over to the Blocktron. We don't have block clocks here, by the way. We got Blocktrons, and waiting for that number to just get the rug pulled out from underneath it. But
so maybe we should go through the whole day.
Yeah.
Let's go through the whole thing.
So. Let me just give a really high-level overview. Please correct me. So early in the morning, July 30th UTC time. So that's basically like evening on Wednesday. Hey, Bitcoin uses UTC. Okay, it's not my fault. I checked the chain.
Does it?
Yeah, kinda. I don't know. Matt will correct me on that. Basically, like Eastern time evening on Wednesday, July 29th. This burst of transactions was identified by block engineers. I don't know if I can't remember exactly when they identified it. That's when they occurred. Block engineers identified what I now call wave 1. Literally in 41 minutes, 1,000 Bitcoin siphoned from previously unrelated wallets to a couple collector addresses, and now I think sitting in 3 attacker addresses. They haven't moved since. They're sitting there, those ones. They published a blog post about that, and Clay and the others on the team have done great work at Block, by the way, especially in the initial stuff. And there's maybe some good news. We haven't heard any follow-up on this, but about that wave 1. Anyway, that's like effectively East Coast time Wednesday night last week. It takes until 6 or 7 p.m. the next day, Thursday, for CoinKite to actually post that there is a bug. There's another wave, a defined wave.
So
yeah, go ahead.
Maybe we
Go
should
ahead.
break that day down, because I mean, if you're talking about the stress of it, so a few hours later, I'm not sure exactly when. I don't know if you remember. There's this Reddit post that goes up of someone who
1
says
p.m.
like 1 p.m. So the next day, basically, the Reddit
This
post
on
goes
Thursday?
up.
Or
Yeah,
on-
it was the
yeah.
next day. Yeah.
It was way earlier, but I saw it at 1 p.m. DM'd Kevin, and then Kevin started talking about it
But it
on
was
Twitter.
after the
Okay,
wave.
so anyway, there
Yeah.
was a Reddit post where someone posts like, okay, you know, I have my funds in this Coldcard that I bought this Coldcard. I didn't do anything to it. I just made the seed on it. I set the funds into it. I've never done anything wrong, and my funds are gone. Like, what happened? And so this Reddit post starts to kind of blow up, and there's a lot of discussion of like, okay, well, did you enter your seed into another place? Is there any way anyone could have gotten like a photo of your seed? Do you have it written down somewhere? Could anyone have accessed it? Like people trying to, you know, honestly just trying to find a hole in this story.
Troubleshoot.
To
yeah.
say like, well, here's where you went wrong. Here's what happened, and here's why you lost your money. And he kind of he keeps answering. The op keeps saying like, no, I didn't do that. I didn't screw up here, there, whatever. And at some point, people start to notice and like, oh, what's going on? Like, there's this guy who says he lost his money. He has politely, calmly answered all the questions and said like, no, I didn't screw up in any of the ways that you expected someone to screw up. Maybe we should look into this.
Yeah, and he shared a screenshot of his wallet, and some Reddit commenter commented on the post because he checked the address on an Explorer and noticed that this poster was only one of many people that were affected by the sweep. And at this point, he says, that's fishy.
On the same side of the transaction, all in inputs.
There's a ton of inputs.
And
on
those
this
were
one
not his.
transaction.
The other ones were not his. Yeah. So it's like it looks like, right, the common input heuristic that chain analysis firms use, which obviously doesn't always apply if you do coin join or other things. Anyone who can submit that transaction can potentially is thought to have the keys to all the addresses. So now you've got one confirmed victim and potentially many other victims.
So people start looking into this, sometime later in the day, in the early afternoon on New York time, people start throwing LLMs at it. I know at least 3 people early afternoon on Thursday who asked an LLM, 3 different LLMs, in fact, like, hey, here's this, I think these coins are getting stolen, like, here's the repo with the firmware, like, let's dig into this, let's see if we can find where the vulnerability is. And it turns out the LLMs are pretty good at finding these vulnerabilities, at least the current frontier ones. If you go back to kind of older ones, less so. And people started to realize there's a real problem here. And so that's when it turned into hair on fire, and all of a sudden it was, wait a second, not all of these wallets have gotten drained all the way. Some of these wallets have only gotten half drained, and people are puzzling through why that happened. But in the meantime, well, okay, some of these wallets are only half drained. We need to get anyone who has one of these wallets to move the rest of their coins. Like if there's, probably someone can take, if they can take half your coins, they can take all your coins. So that's when it starts to become very urgent press, right? It starts to become everyone who knows something about Bitcoin has to be tweeting about this, posting it, sharing it anywhere, because if you have money on one of these devices, you need to move it off. At the time, people still weren't sure what the bug was. People still hadn't fully identified, okay, which hardware wallets are vulnerable. After a while, people figured out, okay, MK3 is very vulnerable. There's only 32 bits of entropy if you didn't use a passphrase or a dice roll. So these are going to get stolen real quick. Presumably already
quick?
should have been.
How long does it
weren't.
take to grind a seed at that level? On entropy
32
map?
bits. I mean, on like
a CPU?
phone, maybe an hour or like a half hour.
Wow.
I mean, like it's really fast at that point. It's a
equivalent to like a 2 to 3 word seed. If you just isolated 128.
2 to the 32. Yeah, it would be a quarter of the 12-word seed, or quarter of the 12-word seed. So that'd be 3-word seed phrase. Yeah. 3 to 4. But
We'll dig into this in a little bit. We'll double click on this issue, but for the folks that are non-technical or not mathematicians, this was an egregious fuck up. It makes absolutely no sense why the random number generator and the entropy was so low.
And
Massive
Matt,
fuck up.
the LLMs that the early researchers used to find there might be like a weak RNG bug, do you think that discovering this bug required a frontier model, or is this
No.
something that's happened before that
No, it
normal
just
work
required-
should have?
Yeah, it just required somebody to actually look at the code in depth.
Let's stick with
That's
the
clear
timeline.
that didn't happen.
There are a couple
Okay,
of topics I want to dig into. Why the random number generator was so woefully inefficient. AI's role in terms of speed, identifying AI's role on a go-forward basis with Red Team. But these are let's stick with the timeline for now and bring us up to today.
yeah, we can go through the rest pretty quick then. So at this point, everyone's posting about like move your funds, and then people realize, oh crap, later generation cold cards also have issues, not as severe issues, but also have issues. So then it just becomes everyone move your funds off of any cold card whatsoever now ASAP. This was by Thursday evening. This was the contours of the bugs were fairly well known. Coldcard put up their blog post explaining basically their suggested mitigations. And then because some of the later gen models took longer for an attacker to grind, it was kind of an all hands on deck all weekend. Let's get everyone who has a cold card to move all of their money, because there are going to be people who aren't going to have their funds stolen until Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And so it was just a mad rush. Let's find anyone who has a cold card, get their money off.
And maybe just to a detail that I didn't expect, but people were confused about, it's not because you're using a cold card right now. It's because you generated your seed on a cold card at the time. So you may have had an MK3 in 2021 and moved to, I don't know, a Bitbox in 2024, moved your words. The seed is still compromised. And people were confused about this, especially if you add to this the recent popularized BIP85, where you could have a single seed and have a key for your Lightning node, a key for your coin joins, and all those keys were all at risk. And I can understand how, from the point of view of a user, it's different software, different hardware, but all of those were at risk, and it was very hard to get the message across, especially in this timeline.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that was kind of where things were over the weekend. I think on Friday, Block posted, some of the security researchers who work at Block posted information about the attack. They figured out, in fact, it wasn't. So these wallets were getting only partially swept. Turns out this wasn't just, there was some early speculation that this was a gap limit. So basically the attacker has a seed, they have to derive a list of addresses, and then they have to check the chain for whether those addresses have funds, and they'd only derived some number of addresses. They hadn't derived enough. There was some early speculation that it was that. It actually wasn't. It wasn't just an API limit. They were using a particular API provider to get the list of, to check whether addresses had coins or whether to spend spend coins from the wallet, and they just didn't bother to look at the second page of the API results. They were only looking at the first page, and so those were the coins they stole, and not
Incredible.
the second page. And so it took a number of hours before other people stole the rest of the coins.
And we don't know, I would say. So the rest of the coins that got stolen from the partial wave 1 addresses is what I've called wave 2. And it did take a couple hours. So the first theft that Block found was initially, I think, because of the pattern, and maybe because of the post, and then seeing the pattern. Or seeing all these other inputs and being like, whoa, this is like a real thing. That was early morning. That first wave was early morning or late Wednesday night, right? So then like afternoon, and it was 41 minutes. Like these were burst in like a couple blocks, like across like 8 blocks or something like that. And then wave 2 happens on Friday. And again, I'm sorry, I am using UTC time. It was like afternoon UTC time. So that'd be like
Very late into Saturday morning.
Yeah. That wave swept a bunch of the partials that had been left behind and some additionals. And together, those are the two biggest by far.
Yeah.
So
there's since been these harder to grind addresses from later generation cold cards are still being stolen. Most of them, I think, have probably been stolen by now. But if you used a slightly longer passphrase, those are still being stolen. If you use just a little bit of dice but not enough dice, those are also still being stolen. So this is still ongoing, and there are still going to be people who lose funds into next week, next month, because they used a little more complicated passphrase that the attackers hadn't ground out yet. But so that's basically the timeline.
What are the total numbers right now?
This is such a good question and an interesting one, because like a normal crypto like hack or exploit, it's typically like a centralized exchange that gets hacked, or like a DeFi smart contract or a bridge, and all the funds emanate from one single starting point, right? So everyone who's looking, all the analysis firms or just anyone looking at block explorers, they have one clear total number, and then the whole effort is tracing them downstream. Are they being mixed? Are they going to an exchange? Are they being exfiltrated? Because of the nature of this attack, the victims are widely dispersed and distributed and have no prior, I haven't found a single one actually, but no prior spending history together, right? So the only way to know, so wave 1 was pattern matched and found by block, right? Wave 2, and just to be clear, I took literally the blog post that explained the exact pattern, plug that into my Clanker-powered Bitcoin analytics stack, which I have a vast amount of Bitcoin data, and then reproduce the wave 1 exactly. And it's not that hard, because again, it was like hundreds of inputs going to just like 3 outputs. Like it's very clearly like a siphon. Anyway, I'll get to more of that, but I think it's at least 110 million today. Most of the later waves are confirmed directly by victims because of
110 million Bitcoin sounds like a lot
$110 million.
of Bitcoin.
$110 million. 1,600 to 1,700 Bitcoin. Potentially as high, just by my own analysis, as 2,200 Bitcoin. But I need further victim reports to confirm
So
that.
to be clear, this is sort of like self-reporting, right? There's no like signature or key that you're able to look at for the blockchain data to say that this was signed or swept.
You'd have to
from it.
replicate what the attacker did and go actually brute force all the seeds.
And we
then
think
you
there
can-
are 12 to 15 unique attackers at this point, to be
So
honest.
for the attackers, was there a way for them to identify what was a cold card address, or were they just using
They were just brute forcing.
brute
Just straight
forcing
brute force.
everything from a period of time? Because we know when these hardware devices were released.
March 17, 2021, Coldcard updated their firmware to this now catastrophically buggy software.
All right, so we're current on the timeline. Any questions on timeline before? Yes.
Two things on the timeline. One, in 2021, there was a person that stated that some of their Bitcoin had got stolen, and then
Yeah.
they reposted that sort of kind of same day. And then two, you had MBK to come out and was like, this only impacts potentially MK3s. Everybody else, you're like, okay, which to be further complicated.
Yeah, the initial, that's true. So Coldcard actually had 2 blog posts. They had a first blog post Thursday afternoon that said if you used an MK3 or an MK2 with this firmware update, you need to move your coins urgently. Your coins are vulnerable. But MK4 and later were fine. That wasn't true. And people on X had already told people it wasn't true by the time their blog post came out. But then, an hour later or 2 hours later, they came out with another blog post that said, actually, MK4, MK5, whatever, you need to move your coins. So, yeah, it took them a minute.
And as of I've seen those screenshots of older Reddit posts or people saying that, like, even years ago they had coins swept as well. I don't know for sure that wasn't these coordinated attackers. That's all I can say. But the bug has absolutely existed for 5 years, 5.5 years, basically. So it is possible that was the bug. It's possible.
It's too early to.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
With only 32 bits of seed, it is entirely possible that 2 people bought a Coldcard and then created the same seed.
Yeah.
And someone
fair
just restored
point.
a wallet and was like, oh, there's money here. Let me
There's free
take it."
Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that ties into maybe something we'll discuss later, but there was a Reddit post of somebody that said, oh, I just created a wallet and there was already money into it and I still deposited money into it and my money got swept. And it turns out that it was not, it's been like, in these situations, many crazy stories get spread without being checked. and that was one of them. In this case, the user had used the dice entropy input feeder of Coldcard, but did not understand, so they just clicked 6666666 for the 100 dice rolls, and ended up with a seed that obviously somebody had used before. So maybe rolling dice may not be the answer to everything.
Just a quick note. This is such a catastrophic fuck up that you can't help but laugh. But I do want to note that Alex has some stories. I've seen stories as well. These are life savings. These are individuals that thought they were doing the right thing. So I laugh through. This is my way of coping with something so catastrophic. But let's at least attempt to be sensitive. There's real real catastrophe.
It's hard to not go through the Bitcoin community right now and not run into people who know a lot of people who lost a lot of money.
Yeah, it's
really
bad.
fucked.
Yes.
I was just going to clarify the Reddit post went up at 13:19 GMT, so 9:19 Eastern, 9:19 a.m.
So the Reddit was 9 a.m. Thursday. Yeah.
On the Thursday, right?
Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Yeah. Okay.
I see. Yeah.
He said there's like 12 to 15 attackers. So it looked like a coordinated attack, or was it one or two attackers?
So
Copycats.
No.
because of Block's great work on wave one, and then so we don't, just to be clear, we do not know, right? We have on-chain data. We do not have, and there is a lead I'd love Matt to talk about that Clay had posted from Blocks about their use of the blockchain RPC provider, if we can.
Let's do a quick.
Oh, wow.
Let's do a quick
I'll
test.
answer that question. It's a good question.
Rob, can you hear us?
I guess not.
Sir, hello.
To answer your question, so about the many attackers, so there was basically once wave one happened and people figured out what was going on, people then started communicating this. By the time it was on Twitter or on X, or even by the time it was known that there was an issue and people asked an LLM, that was enough information for you to go then start brute forcing. So it just became,
That's
okay,
right.
I know there's money here, I know there's money to be stolen, let me go write the
The
code to start
vulnerability
stealing the
has
money.
been
And
described.
there were a lot of people,
And
probably are still a
many
lot of people
others,
doing it.
like publicly, have shown that like traditional, not even like frontier lab models, but like Kimi and the open source ones can, if you direct them to find the bug, they will find it. So anyone at this point, right now, you could run KLM or GLM or Kimi and find the bug. But I would say the reason is, so wave one and wave two look very similar on chain. They siphon many funds from many addresses, consolidate them into a collector address, and then move it to like 2 or 3 holding addresses. There's another one, wave 3, that we found that is totally different topography. Could be the same attacker that has changed their methodology, but not clearly this. The first one, the waves 1 and 2 look like the same person. They figured out they didn't get it all. They scrolled to the second page. They got all the rest of it. Now there's like, I've tracked, like, and again, from victim reports, because I've set, when I have some free time and some free tokens, I've set the clankers on, well, just look for patterns and stuff and see if anything looks suspicious. And I've done some of those, but victim reports have reported losses that are not part of those waves.
Yeah,
so then I look at those transactions and I call those footprints, and I've got like, I'm up to like footprint P, like A through P, right? So like many of these, some of them are totally different. They're not holding them inert. They're exfiltrating them through Thorchain and into casinos. I've seen a bunch that have gone into CoinJoin. They're not the bulk of the Bitcoin. Most of the Bitcoin stolen is sitting inert, but like there's clearly opportunistic actors in the threat environment now.
The wave behavior is not going to happen again because everybody is grinding at the same time. So anybody that finds a seed now is going to sweep it immediately.
Hey, Rob, can you hear us?
Loud and clear.
Oh, excellent.
The CEO of Bitcoin, Rob Hamilton.
If
everyone.
you've been, let's hear a round of applause. All right. Rob, thank you. You actually look pretty good. Oh, there we go. You look pretty good considering how little sleep you've had.
Last night I got 6 hours, which was the longest I've gotten in a week. So this is my first taking a moment for myself. You know, I've been kind of locked in nonstop.
Appreciate you joining. So we ran through the timeline. Let's talk a little bit about Red Team and the role of AI in both the exploit, the theft, and also what Red Team is doing with AI to basically turn this into a really nice story about anti-fragility and the Bitcoin community coming together to come out of this better, faster, stronger.
Yeah, the condensed timeline of how this all started. I can hear a little bit of echo myself, but as long as it's good for you guys in the room.
No, we're good. We're having the echo issue just on your side. We were testing this. The authenticity of PubKey means everything's a little fucked up.
So, as a timeline of events around when this was all breaking, and there was a point, a plausible break in the Coldcard entropy, myself and a couple other engineers in Bitcoin started looking specifically at the RNG generation of code. And I, by default, just loaded up Club Code. And I started probing it, and I instantly got downgraded from Fable to Opus. And it wouldn't really give me much. And then I went to Cubic, and it was kind of poked around, but it didn't clear to me. Then I pulled up open code, put in Kimmy K3, and it like instantly one-shot the full vulnerability report. And I was like, okay, this is crazy, because a couple days earlier, went full open weights, I was using it internally for like my red team in my own back. I was seeing it was very effective at being able to find cyber stuff. And I had a realization of, oh no. Was handling the initial fallout of like the Coldcard stuff, and then quickly started turning my focus to doing very simple pokes in open source Bitcoin firmware. Not firmware, sorry, like open source Bitcoin software. And I started feeling really overwhelmed. I started with putting on my personal credit card, and then 12 hours later, Callie DM'd me saying, "What do you need?" And then very quickly we linked up, and we were off to the races. And that's kind of been accelerating.
So I know you don't have all the time in the world. What has accelerated? You guys have about 24 developers and engineers. There's lots of folks in this room that I think are very appreciative. What are you guys working on? What's the methodology? And also, how can we help?
It's a loosely distributed group. The only rule I say is that Callie calls shots. What we're doing right now is we're just trying to find whatever we can for like low-hanging fruit, and we've been iterating on processes to find additional information. There's been multiple times where I'll do a generic scan, and then someone who's a domain expert in that type of software will query a little bit more about what the findings are, and then you'll get like a cascading escalation or like different things that are found. So my initial observation is that the value of like the specialization of labor with these models is accelerating specialization of labor, because I've seen it way too many times at this point that like if you give it a little nudge, you get so much further if you know anything about it. So it's been a lot. I haven't really fully processed it yet.
Yeah, so I think in the latest snapshot that Calais shared when you were napping, 85 CVEs and then many thousands of high risk.
I don't think we've filed CVEs yet.
I think that they were discovered in the snapshot. I could be wrong about that.
You just mean vulnerabilities, yeah. Severe,
Okay.
yeah.
CVEs is a formal like declaration.
Okay. How bad are these, and how quickly can they be solved before they become, additional exploits?
It's varied. The one thing we're actually working kind of slowing down on the scanning of things and trying to figure out firmware operation of like classifications of incidents, making sure they actually make sense, retooling the harnesses, because after I found the first couple, and not just couple, but ones that were confirmed back to me, it was an understanding that I could do better. So I built a harness that allows it to do it. So when you saw like I'm scanned 100 repos, I spent some time setting up a harness, and then I put 100 URLs in there and just started going to it. And the biggest choke point right now actually is finding people with security MDs in their GitHub repos to try and streamline it. We did a mass batch that was automated for their disclosure processes, but it's in Callie's report, it's like 15-20% actually have that. So anything around that for being able to help with outreach and stop that bottlenecking would be really helpful.
So software developers need to put security files in their repos. This is like basic stuff, guys, right?
Well,
I mean, if anyone needs help with that, reach out to anyone. We can all help with that.
If your code touches money and you're responsible for keeping people's money safe, it's kind of an expectation that you would have a way for people to be able to responsibly disclose to you.
We're going to get into how this happened, specifically with Coldcard. It involves another company called Foundation Devices. They make the passport, and why it moved from open source to closed source. Rob, I don't know if you want to stick around for that part or how much time you have. If you want to just sit there and drink your beer, that's cool too.
Can I ask
I may
Rob?
take a sip of my beer, but
Can
yeah,
I
please
ask
ask
Rob
questions
one
before.
question too?
Yeah,
that-
please. And if there are any other questions for Rob, let's use his time.
Hey, Rob, I don't know if you can see me. It's Thorn here, but good to see you, brother. What's it like being, you work at Bitcoin Park a lot. You're in Bitcoin Park. I saw Rod Rowdy's been bringing you provisions, like Celsius and pizza and stuff. What is the community rallying to help feel to you, and how can you describe that?
It's been really. I'm very flattered and honored. It's a very uncomfortable position. It's not something that I was looking for when I started. The first tweet was something to the effect of, "I'm loading $200 to my own credit card to start looking at stuff. If anyone wants to help me, let me know." And it very quickly snowballed. I'm trying to responsibly manage that as best I can. And the love and support, people sending out messages of support. Becca's been giving me updates. Everyone talks to Becca because I can't respond to everyone, and it's been really good. Thoughts that I have that sitting here and going through all of this, I think the Coldcard stuff from a community level was actually like a very deep spiritual taking of the Bitcoin culture, and starting all of this scanning stuff. I see that there's demons in the code, and I'm just trying to help my friends. Right. And I think the huge shout out to OpenSat. They're going to be the long term of people I think working on this stuff. This is not my day job. I'm trying to, as soon as possible, able to responsibly remove myself from the process, so everyone else who is more able to work on these kind of things are able to. I'm kind of just the right place, right time. I'm not. I try to not make it about me. I'm just really trying hard to do that.
Any other questions for Rob? Yes. Hold on one sec. Let's get you on a mic so Rob can hear you.
And it's good to see Matt and Antoine too. Hey,
Rob,
guys.
have any professional security engineers joined your group, or is it mostly just Bitcoiners who are worried about this?
It is a tight web of trust right now. So we're keeping it to people that we have very high faith and trust and confidence to. The thing is that what we're doing is not special. I just did a tweet shortly before I got on here. For $10 to $30 credits, you could poke a code base with PubKey. This is not like deep arcane stuff. And what I'm more shocked about is that the professional security industry wasn't already doing this. And I think Bitcoin is just the easiest one to get hit and popped with first because it's where you can get money. But I think there's actually a real reckoning trying to understand what this means for technology now, the asymmetry of this. PubKey specifically is just so powerful in what it's doing. I think it's just going to change cybersecurity as a practice. But I didn't get the job and resume of every single person we're working with, though, so I can't confirm nor deny.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that, I think this has been ongoing all year. Bitcoin has really been spared quite a bit in that it took this long before any major Bitcoin things got hacked. A lot of crypto smart contracts have been wrecked by LLMs all year. In the first half of the year, kind of in the middle of the year, quite a bit. I guess we're still kind of in the middle of the year, but in the first half of the year, they got wrecked pretty hard. Also, just the general security industry. I mean, I think there was a talk that went fairly viral in the security industry in January, February. I don't remember when it was. Maybe December of last year. By a security engineer who worked at Anthropic, who was just talking about look, this is so bad. I can take my Claude model and point it at the Linux kernel and tell it to find a bug, and it comes back with a bug, and many of them are real and legit problems. I think the Linux folks had, they had this process for security disclosures that they've had for decades, and at the beginning of I forget who said this, maybe it was GKH, maybe it was Linus, described basically this process at the beginning of the year, late last year, they were just getting slop, just garbage that wasn't real vulnerabilities, whatever, and then in February, March, April, it turned into real vulnerabilities, and all of a sudden they were getting 10 times more volume into that security email than they were last year, and all of it was real, and they've had to pull more people into the Linux security email handling club. So this isn't news to the security industry. It's just that Bitcoin, frankly, has been lucky that we got this far without major issues. And but also at the same time, that means there has been arguably a little bit of complacency. Like, I think a number of Bitcoin developers have spent a lot of time spending time doing code review. Like, on our team, Elias at Spiral started the Loop project, and Block has been donating tokens to scan a select few number of Bitcoin repos for the last 2-3 months. We found a bunch of bugs in LDK with it. Not all of them security, many of them just actual bugs. They're really good at telling you this is a security bug, and it's not a security bug. It's just a bug that you should fix. So we've been doing that for a few months, but only a select few repos, and a number of other developers, some people on Bitcoin Core or whatever have been doing it, but it's not been broad. And now after this, I think this has been a wake-up call to everyone in Bitcoin that they need to move quick and that there needs to be more formalization of this. It needs to be looking at more repos, so like the stuff Rob and the Red Team have been doing of just looking at everything instead of being stingy about which repos we look at and not spending a ton of money on tokens. It's just let's go ham on everything.
And Matt, can I ask you real quick though? Project Loop? What's that called? Project Loop?
Project Loop, yeah.
Can you talk about that? What is that?
There's not a
don't know if
lot
you know
more to
about
say
it.
about it than what I already did. I mean,
Yeah.
it's this. We've been doing it for a little longer within Block Corporate. So Block Corporate has sponsored it and funded the tokens for that. Elias on my team, as well as some of the people from Block Security team, have worked on that. Similar work is obviously ongoing on Block's proprietary code, obviously, but Loop is looking at Bitcoin open source code and a few other things. But yeah, I mean, it was also, as the models have also gotten a lot better, right? So like in the last 3 months, like when Elias started it, it was, a lot of manual triage. It was, okay, I get all these reports, most of them are crap, some of them may be useful, but how do we figure out how to triage these and figure it out? Because you get a lot of volume out of it. The usefulness and the signal to noise ratio has continued to improve. So yeah.
I got a quick question for Rob. I want to go back to the Web of Trust with building the Red Team and sharing information and everything. If it weren't NVK, he'd probably be on Red Team, right? As a security expert, this was a jarring surprise. But like, do we have any learnings from how we can assess, who's in that trust tree? Because before this, he would have been one of the guys.
I mean, I also think that would be reasonable. Like, NVK is probably, hopefully, but I assume would not be someone who's like, oh, well, there's this vulnerability in, like, I don't know, a Lightning implementation. Let me just steal all the money from all the nodes. Like, I don't think he would. So
I don't think that he would either, and I know him, over many, many years at this point. But as somebody that's a non-technical person, I have a really hard time squaring how bad this fuck up was.
Was bad.
Was really bad.
There have been other bugs in crypto wallets that were this bug in the past. Like that's
Yeah,
why I was asking if you needed an LM to find it. It's
Yeah,
been
but-
found well before.
Yeah, but it was like
No, this is by far the worst.
I think there's two parts to this that make it a little hard to answer that question. Because on the one hand, like, the specific type of bug that they implemented, right? It was a few bugs kind of interlocking. It was that they had this fallback. So when they're testing the firmware, not on a physical device, but on like an emulated device on their computer, they don't have this random number generator, and so they had fallback in the code for if we're on an emulator, don't bother trying to query the random number generator because it doesn't exist. So just return this fake random number.
That's just bad code, right? That's not even bad.
Do
Do you know if the libNGU number generator was actually good?
So,
it okay?
There's two sides to this, right? So it's like on one hand, like that, and the fact that they had like this confusion between an if and an if-def in C in the preprocessor. Like these bugs, these exist. Like this is not unique to them that they might make that mistake and that they have an insecure fallback. That totally exists in many hardware wallets, in many software projects, whatever. However, at the same time, it is also the case that those should not have existed, right? So the fact that the specific bugs they made are things that many software engineers might make. They did not practice careful coding around this really important thing, right? So the code, I know a lot of people who looked at the code over the years and said, like, this code is not well written. It's kind of lazy here and there, whatever. Didn't necessarily find the bug. The bug, is a little hard to spot. But also, okay, you have this insecure fallback. You should have a better way to deal with the emulator than that. You should be more careful around the way this code is written. And so it's hard to answer the question of, like, how bad did they fuck up? Because on the one hand, the actual mistakes were, okay, yeah, I mean, people make those mistakes. On the other hand, they didn't write the code in a careful way where making small mistakes wouldn't have led to a major bug.
I always think about the random number generator in like a Powerball machine. Is that like a good one, you think?
Yeah.
All right.
The Powerball is pretty good, yeah. Don't worry about it.
Our most our most venerated hardcore Bitcoin hardware wallet should probably have the same. But anyway.
I don't. So it's hard to find a balance between taking the right lessons from this event and not kicking a man that is already down. But I would be a bit harsher than Matt has been. It is true that it's a programming mistake that we could have made. I could have made this mistake. Probably Matt could have made this mistake. But probably our code would have been reviewed by somebody else. Probably our code would have had layers of testing, and after the testing, layers of third-party audits. If you're going to, like, not even talking about all the marketing around it, like promoting it as the most secure hardware wallet on the market, which was always cringe and not true to anybody who dared to look at it. But just if you are going to sell it as a security product, that people are going to rely on it, and for like billions of dollars in totals, probably. Yeah, you should have multiple layers of defense before this reaches production, and they didn't have that. And on top of that, they would antagonize anybody who tried to be one of these layers.
I think we're going to talk about that part of it too. But can I ask you, Antoine, like, I'm not a software developer or cryptographer. I won't say I'm non-technical because I have a different suite of technical skills, but not coding specifically in any meaningful way. Your guys' point, what I'm hearing is, like, if you're making a wallet of any type, hardware or software wallet, this is mission critical code, right? So a minor fuck up on mission critical is a major fuck up. Is what I'm hearing.
I think it's, if we're talking about something like Bitcoin Core, this would never have gotten, the change itself would have gotten caught in code review, probably, not 100%, but probably. But the code structure would have been such that this wouldn't have led to a catastrophic failure if that particular change wasn't caught in code review. But I don't want to suggest that, like there are a lot of hardware wallets out there that do not have great code. There are a lot of Bitcoin software wallets out there that do not have great code. If you go outside of the Bitcoin space, the average code quality drops by 10x, right? Like the reality is there is just a lot of bad code out there, and a lot of developers aren't great at it. But even more importantly, there's just limited resources in a lot of cases. I think Coldcard did have enough resources to do this the right way. They've been around for a long time. They had a lot of people. They should have done better. There's no question that they carry a lot of the blame here. But we shouldn't delude ourselves to thinking that, like, well, they're just massively incompetent and they're total idiots. No, I mean, like, they made mistakes that many people make, and they should have done better, but they even structured the code in a way that someone just writing a hardware wallet and not, I would have forgiven them if this were their first firmware release. I would have been like, that's a perfectly reasonable quality for your first firmware release, for your first hardware wallet.
Yeah.
And it kind of was. Like, they rewrote it, and I guess we can get into that, but they rewrote the firmware, and this was their first attempt at the rewritten firmware, I guess. But over the years, they should have improved it, and yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Rob, you still got a couple minutes to stay with us?
I do.
All
I
right,
do.
good.
For anything, for the pub, anything.
Thank you, brother.
Rob Hamilton.
All right, we got a couple of questions.
Hey,
this is more just a security question for Red Team, but do you think BIP 110 would have stopped this attack from happening?
Rob, why don't you take that?
Oh, no. Thank God we don't have to talk about BIP 110 anymore. Hold on a second.
I haven't even thought of it. I heard that I called it though, and they're hard forking, and I wish them success in their shit.
Oh, they called it off. Is that true?
Well, they're in a hard fork. They're gonna change the.
Oh, they got a new
It's
new
a shame
mining
because
algorithm.
like there's so much lulls
Are they
left in
delaying
BIP
the 110,
110.
or are they canceling it? It is a shame.
Yeah, there's so much lulls left, and now we're just like focused on actual real life shit now.
Actual important things. Yeah.
I kind of want to ask about the NVK tweets, but I'll spare us that for a moment. To kind of build on what we're talking about, you know, I think I'm a non-technical Bitcoiner, know enough to be dangerous, but part of the beauty of this project was a lot of the influencers had said this is an open source Bitcoin wallet. That's why we like it so much. So going forward, like, where does the onus fall on who's going to be reviewing these open source style, you know, hardware wallets and otherwise?
Yeah, it's all on Rob
dovetail
now.
it. Starting place, what I would say is AI in general, right? You had basically, if you had K3 today and you were proposing a PR, it'd be like, hey, you're breaking everything, don't do this. Right? What used to be super niche domain specialty knowledge is no longer really real.
Yeah, the reality is like, it's two-sided, right? Like, LLMs are gonna break all of our old shit, but also, I mean, now anybody can, right? Like, yes, it's true. Like anybody, Joe Schmo using an LLM who doesn't know anything and just tells the LLM like, hey, look at this wallet and tell me if it's broken. The LLM is gonna come back to you and say like, yeah, I found all these bugs. Look at all these bugs, and you're gonna have no idea whether they're actually legit bugs or whether they don't matter. But you prod it. You say like, okay, let's dive into that. Let's see if you can write a test for that. Like, see if you can reproduce the attack against the wallet. Let's like dive into all the bugs and discuss them. You can actually be pretty dangerous about it. And so if you've got a Saturday afternoon, you can pretty reasonably evaluate, is this wallet horribly broken, or is it just like fine? Is it like not going to immediately lose my money? So it is actually now kind of democratized, which is nice. For once, the open source argument becomes kind of true going forward, I think. Yeah, if you use the Chinese models that aren't censored. That's true.
So maybe I think your question is about how do we get better quality standards? And sure, there is some guilds in Coldcard, there is some guilds in influencers that promoted it without verifying shit. But I think it starts from the bottom up. I think it starts from users, from community members, from customers that just require, before buying something, just, I don't know, it's legit, in my opinion, as a customer, to ask for a third-party audit for a security product. They had nothing to show, and nobody ever asked that. They just purchased it blindly.
Yeah.
So,
Anton, I'll add to that point. I spend like almost 100K a year on external audits on my code. And I'm a smaller company. I see your point there.
Yeah.
Can we? There's this very big very big adjacent points though. Go ahead. Oh, more questions? Okay, you're right. Sorry.
I think it's worth going through a little bit of the history on the like RNG vulnerabilities in the past. I think to give context for like why this is such a like obvious fuck up that like we saw this with blockchain.info, we saw this with Bitcoin, like we've been through this before, and so like anyway, just like if you could do a little bit of that.
Yeah, so it's true. Yeah, so there's been a few cases of RNG failures in Bitcoin wallets. Ironically, almost all of them seem to have the pattern of having 32 bits of entropy. They seem to always have 32 bits of entropy. Because if you have 0, then everyone has the same seed and everyone knows it right away and you catch it before you release or right after. If you have 32 bits, it's enough that it lasts a while and then everyone steals the money. So we've had it a few times. We had blockchain.info had it. Blockchain.info was actually different. It was in the seed generation, but it was also on the live signatures. So if you just updated your wallet and started signing, your money was gone, even without regenerating your seed. So that one was a little unique. But there were a number of other cases. There was LibBitcoin was fairly recent. That was like, what, last year, 2 years ago?
2023.
I think there was
2023. All right,
there
whatever.
was some
3
other
years ago. There was a
mycelium
few
wallet.
other.
I think there was
there
a
was
couple others. Yeah.
BitPay had a multi-sig wallet at some point that had one.
That's right.
Copay.
Yeah, it was called Copay.
Copay
right?
wallet. Yeah.
So there have been a number of rounds of this. This might have been the first hardware wallet that had it that I'm aware of. I'm not aware of any other hardware wallets that have had the same bug.
This is why, though, this is more evidence that, in addition to looking at the repo and how the CoinKite firmware wasn't widely reviewed and had like thousands of commits with no comments. And by the way, this commit, I think, in a meme level quality, the comment, it did have a comment. It said runs. It said, oh, it works. Yeah, it works.
X. Cool.
Because it failed, as the LLMs would say, it failed silently.
Right. Yeah.
We'll get to that.
My statement is in regards to the security audits. I know as a customer of these products, a lot of times I've heard NVK and other people saying that Ledger had done like a lot of work and they had shot lasers at it and they figured out like that it's safe and whatever, and that things were being done, and therefore as a consumer I was very confident to purchase this product. But my question really has more to do with, do you think the community at large, like the security experts or other software developers, were also lulled to sleep by these, assertion,
I think there's a few, and I don't know, do we want to get into this? Maybe we should just go ahead and get it, because it's come up a few times. Maybe we should go ahead and get into the kind of culture around this.
I think it's here. One last question before we do, because that's a big topic that we're going to cover.
That's fine. I was actually going to make a statement before that, but I'm just going to go straight to the question. So since I'm terrible at names, the amazing person on the TV, thank you, Rob. Since sounds like that the majority of this has been indexing vulnerabilities through like LLMs or algorithmically. Once you have found those, because even though LLMs have gotten better, there's still potential for error. Once you found these errors, are you taking like the open source code and running it in the sandbox environment to verify as a human that these are actual errors? Like, what's that brief process?
I'm in a tough spot because I'm not trying to say too much until it all becomes available. But I would say that things are validated, and they're also often peer-reviewed within the team to understand the system and give context to it. There's extensive work being done to make sure that it's not fully arbitrary. And if there's things that are not verified, they're disclosed as so in the report as an informational, like just letting you know.
Yeah, and it's often the case, even after your report to a project, the severity level may be adjusted by the project itself because they know better if, maybe it could be exploited from another door.
1,000%, and I only filed my first disclosure report 4 days ago, so I'm very new to this. I'm trying to be very judicious and respectful of traditional processes, understanding that I'm not an expert. So that is right. That what I've now learned is that when you report these things, there's usually a conversation on what they think the severity is. And I usually disclose when I do that, or anyone on the team does that, is like, this was an AI-generated report. We're just information. We want to let you know, and try not to be authoritative about it. And we're just strictly trying to help, right? We're not charging for any of this. We're just trying to get people who maintain the code an extra set of eyes for code review. It's like the hardest part for any project is to do good code review. So we're taking some money and helping them look at parts of the code base they may not have for a while or give it a new perspective.
All right, let's talk about code review and what happens here. Bitcoin Core is obviously free open source software. It's sort of just naked in the woods, and people can argue about it, comment on it, and see what's going on. That was the case with CoinKite devices. Help me with the licensing models a little bit.
Yeah, so go ahead.
No, so I want to
talk about.
Can I just
say before we even get into this that I know, but I can't say much more, that Mythos has audited Bitcoin Core, and any vulnerabilities, my understanding is none are super critical, have been responsibly disclosed.
Look, we're not going to fire the
I
core.
want people to know that.
We're not going to fire the core developers anymore. That's
And
over. Everything's fine.
I want to call that out.
Thank
Actually.
you, core
That's true. That's true. Thank you to Bitcoin Core.
The original red team.
I was going to say the most library you're looking at is libspec P256K1. No, nothing.
That's incredible.
So I wanted to, we're not firing core. That is like Bitcoin.exe. If you're not a developer, it's how all the signatures work. It is squeaky clean.
What's the second?
Yeah, what was the second one that you posted about?
The question was, what's the
No,
second
it
thing?
was
that we
ordinals, right? It was
Was
ORD
ordinal.
by Casey Rodemore.
Yeah, Casey's ORD was the cleanest one because there was only one issue, and it technically was impossible because it only ever interfaces with Bitcoin D and Bitcoin D, and Bitcoin D never does anything other than sig hash all.
You got to go get
there was
the
like a corner
12-fold
case.
or something.
Rob,
go
when are you
pick up some
gonna-
ordinals and say thank you
When
for
are you
Casey's
gonna-
clean code.
Rob, when are you going to make the people feel safe and tell us that Dogecoin has also been audited?
Oh no, don't
just-
start. I only have so much time in machines to look. I can't save everyone, but I think
Yeah,
the
Elon's the
warning
CEO.
blast has been sent out. Anyone can go do what we're doing right now.
All right, so let's
and
go
we're just trying to do it as the good guys and responsibly disclose and hand it off because the bad guys may not do that.
Yeah.
Like, so everyone should be looking at this.
Let's go to the code review part. Open source software is freely available, which means somebody can pick that up and use that as the backbone for a new product or service. That happened in this case. CoinKite released and had most of the software background for their devices openly available, so people could, poke holes in it, test it, peer review it, so on and so forth. Another company launched called Foundation Devices and said, this is great tech. We can improve on the UI and UX. We're going to make another device. Rodolfo MBK got, I think, publicly very upset with this and actually changed the licensing model or whatever in terms of what was released, how much was released, and I believe this specific piece was hidden. And I have a couple questions around this. The decisions that were made and why they were made is one that I would like to pose to the panel. And the second one, if this was not open, who found the fact that the RNG was like such atrociously low entropy? How was that? How was that discoverable?
So
For the
what
from
happened is
the
they
attacker's
had-
perspective.
So what happened is they had the code was under a certain license, and they said, well, we want to change the license so that no one can take our code and run it on another hardware. Our new code can't be on a new hardware. You can't. You could relicense the code. You can say, I'm gonna change the code that I'm offering, change the license under which I'm offering you the code from now forward. But the old code is still licensed under the old code. You can't take that back. That's part of the point of an open source license. Is I can't give you this code, have you start running this code, and then take the license back and say, haha, no, now you have to pay me. So they had to rewrite the code. So they were looking at this code base that was under an old license, and they said, actually, we want to totally overhaul parts of the code base and then put that code under a new license and say, no, we have this new code, it's actually better, and these foundation guys are running our old code, and that code is shit, our new code is better. So there was some pressure to them, I guess, from NVK to basically overhaul parts of the code base, and one of the things they overhauled was, in fact, the RNG, and they introduced this bug in that overhaul.
Thank God. It's funny because they didn't want anyone else to use the code. That's why they changed the license. And thank fucking God they did not use the code. Are we aware of anyone that did use that code?
No, I don't think anyone else has used that code. So the code was still readable by anyone. You could still go look at the code, download the code, figure out what's in the code.
NVK wrote about this. He said it's not free and open source software fully, but you can verify it. That's what he said.
But you can verify it.
So the RNG was discoverable.
Was readable. You can go read the code and see the bug in the code.
In what world did somebody not figure this out? I guess people did figure this out, but
because nobody looked at it correctly. A lot of us looked at it, like what Matt said earlier. A lot of us were like, maybe there is some bad patterns in the code. I'll stay away from it, because it's just, you're not going to spend a fucking week auditing firmware on specific hardware. If you want to audit it correctly, you probably need the hardware as well. You're not going to do that when you have 1,000 other things to do, unless you're hired to do it, or unless you're part of an actual open source project that promotes the community around it and promotes review and contribution from more people. So I think the source availability is very defendable, and fair enough. You want to work on some stuff and you don't want other people to take it, fair enough. You just worked on it, that's your thing. But get some incentive for people to actually look at it, because otherwise nobody is going to.
Yeah, just to put a finer point on it, smart people are busy. Smart people tend to be busy. They tend to have stuff to do, and they're not going to just spend all their time going around and auditing all of the other stuff.
For free.
Unlike Rob, apparently.
Well, it costs money. Can I
With all
also
his
ask,
free time on his hands.
Warren Tagomi posted something that I thought was relevant here and interesting, and it goes to the culture, not just of NVK's adversarial relationship with Foundation, but Warren said that Bitcoin devs don't use cold cards. And is that true? And also, is that because it wasn't FOSS?
I don't think that's entirely fair. There are certainly some devs I know who lost a lot of money over this weekend. But that said, I think the point he was making is the interesting point that was asked about that we should discuss, which is that there were a number of developers who looked at it. I hadn't, but Antoine just said he has. I know a number of people who had looked at the code briefly and said, wow, this code kind of sucks. It's not great. It's not the best written code. I don't know that I would trust this. And some of them said something about it. Some of them put in various places like, the code here kind of sucks, whatever. Many of them didn't. But the ones that did quickly learned not to talk about their code. Because if you come out and you say, yeah, their code's kind of sloppy, well, it's not really a particularly concrete allegation, right? Just saying their code's kind of sloppy. And that was more than enough for NVK to scream at you. Because fuck you, you're an asshole, and you're making these loose allegations about our code that you can't prove anything. Our code's great, fuck you. And I think that this dynamic played a really material role in discouraging people. Whether someone would have actually looked earlier and found the bug, I don't know. But this definitely played a role at discouraging people from looking at the code. It discouraged people from commenting negatively about the code. And there's no question that that also created more positive view of the code because no one was saying anything negative, because if you said something negative, you get screamed at. So instead, people just let them go, and the only people saying anything about it were saying positive things.
Yeah.
And I think that that was very successful their marketing, but it was also very bad because it resulted in no one looking at it.
Yes.
Here, one second.
Yeah,
Rob, go ahead.
Yeah, go.
I just wanted to briefly add, I've looked at the Coldcard firmware, but like when they added miniscript, like the Python layer, right? Like not the actual literal, I didn't go to the basement of the hardware generation. That was I don't write C code. Like that's not my area, right? So the MicroPython stuff I looked at, but you know, like level of code review, I think to Matt's point, there's very few smart people who would be qualified to look at that, and they're all very busy.
Yeah, that's fair.
Antoine, you want to add
Antoine, go
something
ahead if you had a comment there.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on what Matt said. I think it's true. I know of at least 3 different highly respected people that are either hardware experts or Bitcoin experts or both that have reported security vulnerability to Coldcards and were shunned away and did not want to. One of them ended up reporting a security vulnerability that was affecting 3 different devices, except they didn't tell it to Coldcard just to spite them because of previous behavior. That was Salim Rashid, who is a famous security expert and researcher. And it's just red flags all around. And however, going from red flags to having one of these people that, like, I looked briefly at the code and I decided not to use it for myself. And when somebody asked me, I would say, do not use it in a single sig. But I wouldn't go on Twitter and be like, make elusive comments about, oh, I looked at Coldcard and it's sloppy, or like, unless I have a good criticism, I'm not going to publicize them. And so it's also not entirely their fault. It's also just you're not going to make elusive criticism of somebody unless you have something substantial.
Yeah.
There's 2 things that are happening, I think, with the conversation, with the community at large. Also culturally, we've mentioned, how we've gotten into this mess. MVK is a big personality and has been in the space for a very long time. I've worn my open dime for maybe 10 years, maybe a little bit less.
By the way, those also might have bugs, I've heard. I don't know if Rob, have you looked at?
Yes, actually, Zach Herbert from Foundry ran a full rundown trace of the firmware and did some cross testing and was able to see the entropy was correct for open dime.
was correct. Is
The
that what you
tap
said?
signer and SAS cards are Java applet cards, so they're actually closed source. I was talking to Alico Splini, who said it's very unlikely they were literally using the same exact stuff because Java has its own random libraries you can pull in, right? So but you can't fully cross-verify it. I'm just trying to pull it out.
Yeah, so now, look, a lot of things are sort of spiraling, right? Is my block clock phoning home, and does it have a microphone
I
in
almost
it?
threw my block clock in the Hudson River this morning. I want
I
everyone
mean,
to
yes, your
fucking know
block clock
that.
is phoning home. It's asking for the price. You knew that.
Yeah, of course, but you know what I'm talking
It's
about.
not spying on you, though.
You know, the other thing is that I could never get mine to stay connected to the internet for more than like an hour at a time, so like it didn't really work in the first place. But there is a bit of a PR crisis from CoinKite's perspective when we're looking at, what is it, Swick and Peter, like the two aliases here?
Yeah, they're CTO, right?
Yeah, correct. So I'm not making an allegation that this was an inside job, but those allegations are running rampant on Twitter. From my perspective, there needs to be that would be the first priority if I were involved with the company here to, you know, completely debase these allegations. What is the pathway forward here for CoinKite when you find yourself embroiled in something like this?
So first of all, to be clear, I am very, very, very skeptical of any claims that this was an inside job. Not just, I mean, it looks bad. They've made some stupid comments over the years.
Some stuff looks pretty
the
bad, and I
allegation
also
that
agree.
this
I'm
was
not
written-
making that allegation. You know,
Well,
I'll
let
use
me-
the Trump euphemism people are saying.
I'll get there. You know, the allegation that their CTO actually wrote this code under a NIM. There's people making that allegation, which might well be true. I don't know. But the pattern of the first attacker, of the first wave of attacks, is very, very, very compelling that this was just an attack written by an LLM by someone who didn't really know what they were doing. And for whatever you think about the Coldcard people, they wouldn't have made the mistake that they only swept half the wallet. They wouldn't have made other mistakes that I know this attacker made. Like it wasn't an inside job.
I agree, and I will say separately, I want to say this. The reason I didn't throw the block clock in the Hudson River this morning, which I've had over my shoulder on my podcast, which Matt has been on for 265 episodes, 265 weeks, is because CoinKite makes fucking beautiful hardware. Turns out they're not good at software. Catastrophically.
Bad at firmware, yeah.
Catastrophically bad.
But
yeah, but I will say, like...
Again, 10 years. I love the open dimes. What a brilliant thing.
Incredible. Incredible.
This is a
But
tragedy.
I don't personally, and obviously I don't know, and I'm also not making the allegation, but I'm not disproving it either. I don't believe that this was malicious at all. I think it was sloppy. I think it was negligent and not malicious.
To be clear, this is a PR crisis, and I think that they should be out there.
It is worse than a PR crisis, I gotta say. But
that's very hard. I had the same.
It's running wild.
And I had the same comments about us last year. We had similar conspiracy theories going about Bitcoin Core last year, all of last year.
None of that's been disproven.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's
Pretty funny timing with this Bitcoin
now,
10
yes.
stuff. It was all an inside job.
But I can tell you.
Core did the whole thing.
Bitcoin Core did it.
When you're the source of a PR crisis, you don't know what to do, and you'll feel like, oh, I'm going to make things worse if I like be
look, I get
Peter.
it.
And there's people that literally think you created two identities just to rug pull the users of your co-founders. Like going public would be very hard, and I can understand.
I think everything's hard right now for them, and I think that they feel every blow. When this was unfolding, I tweeted that from PubKey's accounts. They feel every single blow of this. We should let them up. I would like to, on a personal note, I would like to see them be a little bit more public against some of the really crazy allegations as we bleed into block clock and other things like that.
I also know,
just my opinion.
I also know several people there though that aren't NVK or this CTO who are just damn committed Bitcoiners. That salespeople, like this is, it's a tragedy for these victims, many of whom have lost their life savings. But it is also a tragedy for CoinKite.
But can you speak a little bit about some of the victim reports that you're receiving?
To close the loop on CoinKite first.
Yes, please.
I I think two things. So it wasn't an inside job, and we should have grace that they made a mistake and they weren't as careful as they should have been in many ways. But also, I totally agree with the people who say they'll never use another another CoinKite product to store Bitcoin, and I don't think anyone should, because the reality is, yes, they made mistakes that any developer could have made, even a great developer could have made, but also they weren't careful at all, and more importantly, they created a culture around their product that discouraged anyone from speaking up or reviewing it. And
there was a lot of
was
hubris.
their fault.
There was a lot of hubris.
And I don't think overnight they're gonna change and say, actually, no, we're gonna be all about, I'm sorry, it's just that I don't
the one thing I
think
just wanna
people
add,
should
Matt,
use that product.
Just one quick thing is you have your Bitcoin on a cold card at the moment, and you know you're not part of the effective set of users, or you're in a multi-sig or whatever, you're mitigated from this. I would just encourage calmly and not rushed way making plans to upgrade, because there have been multiple reports already of people getting hit by scam wallets because they were in a panic and they were like, oh, I have a passphrase, but I don't feel safe. And then they end up sending it to a scam wallet. So just
one last note on this. I want to open this up. We have a bunch of questions. People are jumping out of their chairs here. If I were a pleb that lost any material amount of Bitcoin on one of these, or it's locked and it hasn't been swept, based on the way, from my perspective, that the CoinKite team has handled this over the last 7 days, I'm not going to them. I'm going to Alex. I'm going to you, Rob. I'm going to James O'Byrne. I'm going to lots of other people.
Wicked Smart Bitcoin on X, absolute legend.
There's too many to name, but I'll tell you the one I'm not going to. It's CoinKite.
Yeah, it's true.
I think one thing we maybe didn't talk about, and I wasn't 100% paying attention the whole time because I was trying to track down the timing for the Reddit post. NVK tweeted, "It is FUD. The guy loaded from a different wallet. Mess of a history of events." That is fucking insane.
That was early though, right?
Yeah,
in the timeline.
But
yes, that was his initial reaction.
The fact is, this is
and I
NVK's
want to say
answer to
one more thing quickly.
That was his
which
base
is,
reaction.
Before he posted that, I had heard about this. I told people NVK is going to say user error, because if you told him about that email, your block clock doesn't log onto the internet, it's your fucking fault. Anytime anyone says anything's wrong, it's user error.
Right.
The hubris and the whole thing was the reason I didn't use his products, was because he was a prick to me. It's just he never treated reports of issues as serious.
The reality is, it's just they created a culture around their products that was very negative to getting useful feedback. And when you're responsible for securing people's funds, the most important thing, the responsibility you have, is to get as many eyes on this, to be as careful as you can, and to get as much feedback as you can. And they didn't. And they did the exact opposite of that at many corners.
And nobody kept them honest either.
Yeah, I mean, it's all of our. It's, there is a broader conversation to be had about the dynamic in the Bitcoin community of influencers who trust it. I mean, if you
we should get to that. We should talk
because they
about
were
that.
so effective. Well, yeah, maybe we should
I don't
do
know if we have
questions
time.
before we get there.
Yeah,
but
let's take the questions. But yeah.
Yeah, I know
Drew Armstrong.
I came. Thanks for doxing me. I know I came late. So if you guys already answered this, just talk about the thing that both of you guys wanted to talk about anyway, because this has been awesome. But what do we know now about the attacker and who the attacker might be, or what tools that they use? Has that already been discussed?
I think so. I know a little more, but I can't.
Not the CoinKite team.
So the information, all of the information that anyone knows has been disclosed to the relevant law enforcement, and we're hoping that law enforcement is able to do useful things with it. We don't know. The information that has been disclosed is just what what the engineer at Block posted on Twitter, or on X, which was that they identified that this individual who did the very first attack used a specific API service, and that they used that service to scan for vulnerable addresses
with a paid
and
account.
Transactions with a paid account on this API service. And so
maybe
they obviously
breadcrumb
have
there, a credit card or a stable coin or whatever.
Yeah. Almost certainly an LLM, probably Kimmy, just because it's not censored.
It's quite good at this as well.
but like we don't know. I mean, it was not long after Kimmy K3 came out, so it was probably they were just throwing stuff into Kimmy when it came out.
And to that point, Matt, like
Plausible.
There was only a couple hundred that moved at first. It was like 600. If you were like a long-range attacker, wouldn't you just have the entire key set and pop it at once?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
if you do this for years.
Yeah.
Right,
these
like,
guys.
This wasn't a professional at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
And also, so this first attacker was very confident because he swept all addresses at the same time, meaning he was cracking keys and he wasn't spending from them. He was cracking the next key and the next key, and he wasn't spending from them. He wasn't concerned about being double spent by somebody else cracking exactly the same key. So he was very confident that he was the only one who had discovered the bug at this point. But now it's over. There's dozens of people brute forcing the keys, hundreds of them. We are going to just see normal looking transactions that are going to sometimes spend from cold cards, sometimes spend from cold cards that have been dormant for years and that people just haven't checked in 6 months and wake up 6 months later and see their stacks gone. So we won't be able to estimate the impact of this stack. This is over. We just knew the couple first attackers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Let me add
it looks
to what
the
Antoine
same whether
and
they're
Matt.
stealing or.
Let me add, because I said this before, but I'll very quickly say it. Crypto exchange hacks or DeFi hacks or smart contract hacks or bridge hacks emanate from one central point. So it's very easy to trace it from that point. So all the effort is tracing downstream. You know that the hack is contained to that set. This is not like that. So we need victim reports to help us identify new attackers. As Antoine and Matt have said, like, there are now many attackers. It's very clear that like the vulnerability is out there. Other people are putting it into Kimmy. They're also finding it. We've been tracking that, and like Rob, who stumbled his way into working on this and now is leading or part of this team that's deeply working on it. I took Block's blog post and plugged it into my shit and found wave one. And then we said, whoa. People started DMing me and saying, well, I lost my funds too from a Coldcard, but it wasn't in wave one. It was this other transaction. And I was like, well, that also has co-spends. It looks a lot like wave one. Wave 1 and 2 look a lot alike. Probably either the same person, most likely the same person would be my guess, cleaning up from the ones that they left behind, figuring out that they had to scroll further on the API results to find the other addresses. Wave 3, which I found, again, because of victim reports, other people later came to me and said I lost my money on Coldcard, and it wasn't wave 1 or wave 2. And then I got a couple totally different topography. Could be the same attacker and change his methodology and his operational execution. Maybe a different attacker, and this one is totally different. Instead of co-spending a bunch of stolen funds into one address, this is mostly 293 ultimately held now in 293 script addresses, maybe a multi-sig, but we wouldn't know unless they spend. But flowing from sometimes it's 8 inputs, 2 inputs into 293 collectors and then 293 addresses, not co-spending. I actually have examples that at least 6 of these, the initial attack includes different people's funds in the same input side, but again, totally different topography. And now I've got, like I said, like 16 different other patterns that now just look like opportunistic copycats, not the original. The vast majority of the funds, though, like 12 or 1,400 Bitcoin of the 16 to 2,100 Bitcoin are from the first 2 waves, right? So almost all of it is the first attacker, and none of those coins have moved.
All right, we got a lot of questions. We're gonna do.
I also want to say real quick, not one of those coins is from a multi-sig.
I want everybody to be able to ask their question. Let's just Gatling gun this.
Yeah, so in the blockchain.info wallet bug years ago, there was a white hat that swept a large number of Bitcoin from people and then returned all of them. Is there any evidence that there's any white hat hackers currently doing this? The intent to return coins? Is there any plan to have a strategy like
not
that?
material. So there was someone, I did see someone post saying they'd stolen a little bit, but on the scale of it, almost nothing. The challenge with this, there's a number of ethical questions around stealing coins as a white hat, but the bigger challenge with this is making sure that you can actually get the money back to the a recipient because you could just show up and say like, hey, that was my seed, because anyone can calculate all of the seeds really trivially,
And
right?
Matt, by the way, like we expect that after some amount of time, call it 6 months or a year, the entirety of all vulnerable seeds will become a public data set, like on GitHub. So like eventually everyone will be able to cryptographically prove that they're their
So
coins.
the challenge is, and a lot of people have done a lot of work on this, we think that you can plausibly show strong evidence that you were the legitimate owner of a seed. That is different from proving it. So because it seems fairly likely that 2 cold cards might have generated the same seed, basically the cold cards were using basically the ID number of the cold card to generate the seed, and so these IDs were fairly small, and 2 cold cards might have had the same ID and generated the same seed. It is not possible to prove because 2 people might have actually just legitimately generated the same seed.
One
it's
other
also
way,
possible for someone to create a fake.
if the coins that were siphoned were funded by a KYC exchange account, then we could trace their provenance back to. One of the things I've told is not only.
Is that how you ended up tagging the OnlyFans?
No, okay. Well, I'll talk about that.
So suffice to say, I think in the interest of getting through
By the way,
questions quickly.
that OnlyFans model works at that website, Tool.com. That is a real thing.
I'm not going to ask. In the interest of getting through questions quickly, suffice to say, assuming there was a material amount of money returned, which I don't believe that there is a material amount of money at a white hat, assuming the FBI gets lucky and catches the guy from the first wave and we get, I don't know, 10 cents on the dollar or something, it will be a challenge to prove who owned which seed, but we think it is possible, albeit expensive, and a manual process that someone would have to run.
Keep your cold cards and email your exchange if you did fund it from a KYC exchange and ask them to preserve your records.
Also, just to follow up on the white hat, at some point, some people had suspicion that we could somehow not identify, but have strong evidence of somebody generating the seed from a certain cold card by keeping the cold card because the identifier was part of the seed generation. This is not the case. The part of the identifier that is used in the seed generation is just the coordinate of the chip on the board of the hardware, which is many cold cards are going to have the same. There is no single identifier for which hardware generated the seed. Keep it just in case, but recommending...
It's not many that have the same, but they can collide.
No.
All right, this is
the
lowest Gatling gun ever. We need to churn through here. All right, next question.
All right, so going back to again the could it be internal, could it be not, whatever. There's 2 things to be true at once, right? So first is there have been other core devs that specifically filed issues about that, but I'm not interested in that. My bigger question is more theoretical, and that is assuming they did know. If you are NVK or the CTO, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, if you're told that this exists, it is a very hard question. So I think, there are a lot of very deep discussions around the ethical implications of doing a white hat theft. So is it ethical? So for example, especially right now, is it ethical if you say have some cleverer way of brute forcing these seeds and you could steal some additional funds? Is that an ethical answer? Because you might steal it and then you return it and then everyone gets 5 cents on the dollar, 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah, or becomes embroiled in years of legal mumbo-jumbo.
After years of lawsuits and figuring out this complicated and expensive process, and all the money goes to lawyers and then nobody gets anything, but you've stolen the money. Some people were going to lose that money. Some people might have retained that money. It's not a clear question. I don't
Number
think
one
there's a
best
clear
thing
answer.
is to broadcast widely that you should move your funds yourself.
Yeah, number one thing. Look, the bankruptcy lawyers, the pigs coming out of FTX, those are the ones that won.
Yeah, and so then the other half of the question is, even putting aside the ethical questions, the first thing you have to do is make sure you can actually figure out who owned what. And with cold cards, you kind of can, but not really. It goes, you have a handful of cold cards that could have generated this seed. Whose was it? Can somebody prove that it was their money because they withdrew from an exchange or deposited to an exchange under their name? Can somebody show... it's
Can I just add?
it's
to,
a mess.
It's not just in the case of White Hat. Any recovery will be impossible to cryptographically prove that you own. This is why I tell all the victims that reach out to me that it is essential that you formally report your victimhood to local authorities, to FBI's IC3, to whatever similar cybercrime or anti-fraud agency there is in your jurisdiction, because it literally could come down to the fact that like you report it first, right? Like,
yeah.
And I do have DMs from people who reported to me very quickly. I assume those will be discovered in litigation going forward.
Yeah.
So I just want to say something to the victims. Like, people are very ashamed when they're victimized this way, and they're reluctant to come forward. I am not publishing your information. I don't even need your personally identifiable information. All I'm doing is taking your X handle and asking for your Bitcoin addresses. I'm not publishing those. I'm using those to identify new attackers and share them with law enforcement, crypto ISACs, FinCEN, all the people that distribute like hacked fund addresses to exchanges so they could be frozen if they arrive there. And you reporting earlier than, say, in 6 months when everyone has the keys, they might all file reports, will be an important marker in this recovery litigation effort.
Not today, FBI.
If you lost your money, it wasn't your fault. Do send your addresses to people. Do report it to your local police precincts. These things are important.
100%. Next question.
Yeah. On a false note, real quick, there's a saying that pride comes before the fall, and I think one thing that hasn't been mentioned is that CoinKite forked from Trezor, and then they tried to obfuscate part of the code and rename some things, and then Trezor reached out and said, hey, you won't benefit from any of our improvements, XYZ security pieces, and then you had NVK to sort of kind of do the same thing to Passport, like which you all have covered, and then this gives this overall impression that you have effed over a lot of people due to pride and greed and not necessarily the Bitcoin ethos. That's one. And then two is that going back to the Bitcoin piece and the BXC, right? Like that was a user piece because it explicitly stated in the code, do not do this. This has low entropy, right? So like you can sort of kind of waive that versus this instance where it is a major fuck up, two characters that have now resulted in 2,000 plus Bitcoin.
That's fair. I mean, there were other, the blockchain.com wallet, but yeah, I mean, there's no question that the pride was a big part of the problem.
I'm so happy that
I call it straight up hubris.
I'm so happy that somebody else at PubKey mentioned that. Everybody knows I'm friends with Eric Voskel, and that's true. That's crypto economics, and it was flagged. So it's a very big difference. Please.
By the way, how funds were laundered, like through casinos and like not really using a mixer, do you think it's possible that like a state actor like Lazarus Group wasn't involved?
I'm almost sure Lazarus is trying to steal funds, if possible, right now. I'm sure by Friday night, by Saturday morning, North Korea was trying to brute force funds. I mean, they have a team dedicated to stealing crypto. There's no question they were trying to do it. I don't believe that they were the first people, again, because the very first attack was not the most competent, and Lazarus Group is highly competent.
Have you guys looked at or talked about James O'Byrne's Tripwire project to explain people who still need to be moving their cold card?
Tripwire has not come up yet.
No, not yet.
You want to explain it, Alex?
No, but I want to answer that question again first.
Hold on 1 second. Rob, can you give us an overview?
Very quickly, just people who did not do anything with the cold card to add entropy have likely already lost funds. There's some additional entropy with MK5 and Q, but I don't know what the latest is, but it's not great. You're in a very short time frame. If you know anyone, just as a PSA right now, hit up a friend of a friend and just get the word out and make sure everyone's heard it. Not everyone's plugged in at PubKey or Bitcoin Twitter, so try to get the word out still. Basically, if you, in theory, you could had an insecure seed and rolled one single die, and that added enough entropy where you wouldn't be in the first sweep. But James O'Byrne has basically done this entire entropy map where he took an insecure seed, different levels of passphrases and dice rolls, as a way to kind of see how the hackers are going across the table, what they're at.
Right, so he has basically like levels of a canary in the coal mine. Which one is going to get swept first?
So if you used a weak passphrase with this much entropy, this many characters or this many words or whatever, your coins were stolen Friday afternoon. If you used with a few more characters Saturday, if you used with a few more characters, they haven't been stolen yet. And James has mapped out all of this, and you can kind of see where they are in this process. They're going to get to the end, but it might take them a while because after a certain amount of entropy, they're renting very expensive GPUs, and they're competing with AI firms to rent very expensive cloud GPUs. So it's going to take them a while to get all the way to the end. So if you have an okay passphrase, move your coins now.
Yeah, and I have
Also,
victim
shout
reports,
out-
by the way, that have MK4s with 2 to 3 word passphrase, human readable, that have been drained as well already. James's is, statistical and mathematical, but I have anecdotes and stories. And I just want to say I have a little bit of a different view than Matt on the North Korea question. They obviously can do this attack. There's no doubt about that. I tend to think that North Korea makes plenty of money just phishing people. They don't need to do an attack this sophisticated. But also the other waves, like I have a potential 4th wave that I'm still waiting for victim confirmations before I say that it's definitely a wave like 1, 2, and 3 are. But I have these like 16 other footprints. These are confirmed by victims, and in most of the cases, I have multiple victims where it looks identical, but they're smaller. A guy who works for me, Will Owens, he moved his funds off a vulnerable MK3, left $150 worth of Bitcoin there as a honeypot. He texts me and says, it's being swept right now. I think it just got swept. I look at it, I'm like, brother, it's in the mempool. You should try to RBF this. He has RBF opt-in on the transaction. It was swept with a 1 sat per VByte transaction. So a very latent, not an urgent hack, right? He RBFs it successfully.
How much Bitcoin?
I don't know, whatever 150 is,
He RBF'd it?
Yes, he RBF'd it, yes.
Fuck yeah.
But because he did this, actually, whether or not he RBF'd it, it would have been useful to me as information.
RBF is replaced by fee. You can broadcast another transaction with
Overwrites the pending transaction.
It overranks it, so miners will pick up with the one that has the higher fee attached to it.
Not always, but often it's a probabilistic outcome. Correct. Well, so even if he hadn't RBF'd it successfully, this instance, we found a whole new attacker. We call it now Drainer Bot. This one exclusively goes after, probably anything it could find, but it broadcasts only with low fees. We've got a bunch. Well, there's German. There's one that I have called German because the guy that I found it with had the word German in his texts. With me. But the point is like this one's purely opportunistic. They're not expending a lot in fees. But now we've seen 10 or 12 successful transactions that DrainerBot has gotten. Like, this is out in the wild. It doesn't need to be North Korea. There are many different possible people doing this. The ones to the mixers. So the thing Thomas was joking about this OnlyFans model I tagged in a post.
Oh, here we go.
It's worth telling the story because
go ahead.
Like on Saturday night after midnight, I was working a case for a victim.
It was late.
It was late, and it was very late. A new victim, though, whose funds were swept in a previously unknown attack, right? Not in wave 1, 2, or 3, just a fully new case. His funds were, unlike the wave 1 and 2, and 3, which are sitting just waiting. I mean, the attackers could sit for 5 years. The Bitfinex attackers didn't spend money for 5 years. Like, this could be a long road, people. Still worth filing your reports and holding out a modicum of hope here, but this one did not wait. They instantly swapped to ETH on Thorchain, and then on ETH, I've got the Etherscan API, so I was trying to help this guy. I'm following it on ETH. It gets deposited to an offshore casino called Duel.com, and this is one of these venues that has basically no discernible jurisdiction. Like, they're formally regulated in a country I've never heard of, with literally never heard of. It's like an isle near Mauritius. I don't even know what the name. I couldn't even recall it to you. No, it's sort of an A.
Diego Garcia.
No, that would be funny. That's literally a U.S. and UK air base. Can you imagine? And just to close out Thomas's point from before, a joke. They're all of their dealers. There's a video poker site. All of the dealers on the site are OnlyFans models. And their account had been suspended on X, so we could only tag known influencers who deal blackjack cards for them, one of whom, it turns out, is a 3.5 million followed porn star. And literally, if you clicked it, like the very first post you would see would be just literal pornography. Anyway, my point is though
hold on one second.
Others are unscrupulous.
No. There's a little bit more to this. So Nick Carter was the one that was like, why did you tag this OnlyFans model?
I was like, their dealer on the site.
And yes, absolutely. But so I didn't catch it, and I started clicking through, and then I arrived at the the X page, and a very good friend of mine.
XXX page.
I only had one follower, and it's a very good friend of mine from college. And
Common follower.
completely like sent me to another level.
But let me quickly get serious. The reason I tell this story, and by the way, the reason we tag them is the post that I made was blasting this casino because they were refusing to freeze the funds because they wanted a police report. But it was like 1 a.m. on Sunday morning. Like there was no fucking police department. This victim was in Canada that was going to send one at least until Monday. So like, and I'm saying like, dude, do the right thing and just like hold it temporarily until you get the reason I mention this though is that like the sophisticated or not in the execution of the attack, wave 1 or 2, smartly, a lot of the percentage of the Bitcoin stolen, the attackers are clearly sitting around deciding what to do, right? Someone that instantly bridges to ETH and deposits to an exchange and does all this exfiltration stuff, they're unscrupulous, right? They don't care. They're not worried about getting caught. Probably a foreign actor in a jurisdiction where it'd be hard to catch them. These are emerging too. They are still the minority of Bitcoin stolen, but it's worth mentioning, like, there is a pretty wide, this is another reason we're very confident that like many people are exploiting this attack now. Like that behavior looks nothing like wave 1 and 2. Wave 3 is more sophisticated in their on-chain behavior. It doesn't look like them either, right? You're down to like dudes that are gambling on gambling sites with the stolen funds.
Yeah, with OnlyFans models,
cool.
yes.
Yeah, to go back to the random number generation. So my understanding was it was a bug in the MicroPython package that was like missing compiler flag. And I also wonder like who's the maintainer of that package.
Yeah, so it was in their code. So it was kind of a bridge across two parts, right? So there was the C code had this flag to disable the real hardware random number generator and just read a made up one, this nonsense one for the emulators, right? So this flag existed for their own testing purposes. The flag was written in a way that they weren't checking the flag correctly, and they always enabled this fallback. And I mean, that was the core of it, and that was ultimately just their code, straight up.
What do you mean by their code?
Coldcard's code that they.
The libngU.
Yeah.
The library that was rewritten in 2021 to change the license of the code. So they rewrote a new C library that was supposed to be consumed by the MicroPython, and this C library had an error, whereas there was a configuration variable about using one of the RNG, and it tested the variable not on the value of the variable, but it was testing whether it was defined. And in the firmware MicroPython project of Coldcard, they had this build configuration where they would set this configuration variable to 0 to say, I'm going to use the real RNG. But the C library would take this 0 as not, this is value 0 branch off. It's going to use it's defined branch on and use the fake RNG, the PRNG.
Yeah, I just wonder, is there not a way for them to like unit test it or formally verify?
There's a lot that they should have done better. I think one thing that Frontier LLMs pointed to this code very quickly, fell back to, or at least I know a few people who pointed Frontier LLMs at it, and they fell back to, okay, I think this is maybe a problem. I'm gonna download the binary and look. And when the Frontier LLM downloads the binary and looks like, oh crap, yeah, this is a problem. So there are ways you could go about this, but ultimately it needs, it's not, it is not entirely trivial to audit, like, is my random number actually random? Because 1 might be a random number. How the fuck do you know? might have come from the random number generator, right? And then the problem too is then it gets hashed a few times and then it does look random. So you put something very low entropy into SHA-256, it looks like the same amount of entropy as anything else on the other side, right? So it isn't entirely trivial to audit a random number generator, but that doesn't mean there's nothing you can do, right? So you can have audit trail, you can test the firmware in an audit trail method where you can log the actual stuff coming out of the hardware and then compare that against how it was derived and make sure that it's deriving the seed from real randomness all the way down to the real seed. This is something hardware wallets should be doing. I don't really think any hardware wallet does this. I don't know the release process for new firmware at Ledger or Trezor or BitKey or whatever. Maybe some of them do, but I think for the most part, people don't have these kind of release processes where they're really checking top to bottom. Maybe Ledger and Trezor do. They probably do, but a lot of these second tier hardware wallets don't, certainly. Then there's the coding. The coding could have been more defensive. You shouldn't have the solution to I want to test this firmware in an emulator shouldn't be let me have a flag in the code to turn off the real hardware random number generator. It should be let me emulate the real hardware random number generator in the emulator so that I don't have this flag at all. It takes a lot more work, but you could do it that way, and that would have been safer. So there's a lot of small decisions they made that could have been made much better, but there isn't a real foolproof way to do this. There's just a lot of layers you should add on top to make it much more likely that you catch issues.
But why were they feeding the device identifier into the pseudo
so that was this fallback. That was just for the emulators to have something that wasn't completely nonsense. They shouldn't have done that. That should not have been there. It should not have been if you want to have a fallback, it should be a constant. It should be all zeros.
So that caused it to fail silently, basically.
Right, it failed silently. It shouldn't. That was absolutely a mistake. It should have. If you want to have a fallback, the fallback should be all zeros. And then if you ship a real hardware wallet and the seed phrase is the same word, 20 times and then one different word, everyone's gonna know real quick that you have a problem. Right, so there are things you can do, like not having fallbacks, or if you have a fallback, make it really painfully obvious by just not having anything there. But there's just layers to this, right? There's ways you can write this code to be better, but it's still not going to be foolproof.
We have a couple minutes left. There's one last topic I want to get to. So you promise me it's quick, right? Yeah? You promise? All right.
A super quick thing and then a quick thing. So to answer, no, for real. We don't. I now even get to the quick thing. Just super quick thing. To answer someone's question earlier about do you have actual other security engineers that aren't in Bitcoin? The reason why they're probably not on this project right now is because there's a thing called Hacker Summer Camp in Vegas, where over 40,000 hackers are right now in Las Vegas doing unscrupulous things and are breaking high-powered companies and stuff. So to answer that, but my second quick thing is that I think the thing that everyone's kind of skirting around is that we can find all of these vulnerabilities and report them to these companies and organizations who are making these projects. But just like with Coldcard, if they're going to be like, oh, cool, you submitted a bug, and then proceed to ignore it until it actually becomes a problem, there's really no point in kind of doing that. So I just want to put out there that as a community, we should be doing don't trust and verify. We should look at this stuff, and if they don't update, tar and feather these people, because that's the only way we're going to have preventive stuff, in my opinion, so that we don't find out the worst way possible in this case. That's all.
It's true.
Yeah, it's true. Thank you. Is that a fun party in Vegas?
So you mentioned if I was a pleb and I was going to pick a hardware wallet, I certainly wouldn't pick CoinKite, right? I agree with that. And I know that people are probably hesitant to recommend specific hardware wallets right now because several people that I trust in Bitcoin previously recommended CoinKite, and that's why I put a lot of faith in that. If I have a multi-sig and one of the keys was generated or is a Coldcard, or if I wanted to do single sig, I don't know if you could recommend a specific one, or maybe ones that you wouldn't recommend.
I'm super confident that you can go with. I'm kidding. I think after this, it's not going to happen. I would say Anchor Watch. I would say Casa.
No, I mean, obviously the answer is multi-sig with multiple vendors, right? That's obviously the right answer. Is multi-sig, multiple vendors.
Absolutely.
Don't put your eggs in one basket. At least a 2 of 3, if not more, or whatever.
Yes. That's how I started That's how I was holding my Bitcoin before I started Anchor Watch. Was a multi-vendor, multi-sig.
Yeah. So
You can also have a diversification of custodial solutions. It's not the end of the world if you have some at Kraken, Gemini, Coinbase. If you have some in an
now,
ETF.
like they're very regulated. I'm not saying I love self-custody. I'm not recommending necessarily, but at least until you figure out your new setup. If you have an exchange or a qualified custodian, like in the United States that you've used, like I recommend, like, dude, if you're in Coldcard setups you don't trust,
go bust.
They can, but I'm saying,
qualified
like,
custodians go bust.
I mean, and just to be clear, funds are
KYC.
flowing.
KYC.
This is well, I get it. Look, if you can't KYC or don't want to, there's a lot of trade-offs. But I will tell you that we're seeing the biggest inflow of small chunks of Bitcoin into regulated exchanges ever. It's the reverse FTX.
Yeah.
When FTX collapsed, Bitcoin flowed off all exchanges into self-custody.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that's happening. I'm not saying recommending one thing or another, to your point, but I will say, if you're uncertain about the technological setup of your self-custody, do not like urgently re-roll a whole new setup.
Yes.
Move it to River, move it to Coinbase if you trust them.
That's true.
Then figure out your setup calmly.
I did this in
then
my
figure
pin
it
tweet.
out.
My pin tweet, I had like explaining the situation. If I was in duress, what I have to do. And for a custodian, I said gun to my head. I put my life savings in River. Wouldn't think twice about it. If I had it, gun to my head.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, without question. So I think there's
Not available in New York State, unfortunately, but River is phenomenal. But in an emergency, you know, Coinbase. Look, you can figure these things out. I understand. But as you figure out the next step, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. So two answers, right? So multi-vendor, multi-sig, and going forward, ask an LLM to review anything. Like, don't use it if it's not open source, and ask an LLM to review it. So,
ask an expert.
Fable won't do it anymore, right? Fable won't review stuff.
People did ask an expert.
But Opus 5 will. So Opus 5 won't review closed binaries, but it will review source code, and it will absolutely do any kind of security review you want, source code-wise. Kimi K3 will as well. OpenAI products won't. But going forward, if you're going to put your life savings in something, you should be asking an LLM, hey, and don't trust its first answer. Its first answer is going to be, oh, I found a terrible vulnerability. It's broken. Push back, you know, explore it, have it check its work, you know, explore what the actual issue is, explore what the outcomes are. If it comes back with nothing, tell it to go deeper, tell it to explore more, tell it to spawn agents, spend some real money on it, spend $100. You know, if you're going to put your life savings to something, spend $100 on tokens. That's a lot of tokens. That's hours of tokens, right? Really push it to dig into it and see what the results are. That is actually pretty good.
I would be less optimistic about using an LLM for a technical review, but I think you can absolutely ask your LLM for red flags and automate the red flag research, because just looking for red flag would have avoided this in the first place. And I think a lot of a non-expert looking at the output of an LLM technical report about a project may not be able to discern what's bullshit on it.
We got a couple minutes left. I want to close out. Didn't kill us.
Before we wrap, can I talk a little bit about the victims? We haven't talked a lot about them.
Please do, actually. That's a good lead into the last thing I want to talk about. Please.
Again, like Rob, I happened upon becoming a beacon for victim reports. I've now talked to 250 victims have reached out to me. Some are suicidal. I've obviously done what I can to tell them that that's a terrible idea and that they should talk to their loved ones. I've heard stories about, I heard one story that was someone whose wife was in labor. They couldn't get home to rotate their funds. By the time that they did, the funds were stolen. They had like 0.8 BTC, which was what they said with their life savings. They had planned to spend 0.2 to buy cribs and diapers and strollers. The stories are absolutely heartbreaking. The cultural demographic of the Coldcard user is the most philosophical Bitcoiner, right? This got huge, these products, like during COVID. I think we know, like I also bought one. I have one in a multi-sig quorum. it cannot reach signing threshold, so I haven't quite rotated it yet. I will, of course, but the median per address loss is like 0.7 BTC. The median average of those people who've reached out to me is about 1 BTC. Many of them say it's their life savings, or that they've stacked sats for 7 years, 10 years, and they've lost everything. It's truly heartbreaking. And one of the things I've said is, like, if it's like a hedge fund blow up, you know, $1 billion, $10 billion, that's a lot more money than what we see, at least we think right now. Like I said, I think I'm saying 110 million confirmed. I expect that already stolen's more like 130 or 40 million. It's going to go up too, but it's not, you know, rich people losing part of their investment capital is not like nearly as sad as what we're hearing from victims to this exploit. And we've said this before, Matt and Antoine both also said it, like, do come forth. Do seek help from your community, your friends and family if you are depressed. Do not feel ashamed. You did nothing wrong. This was not your fault. Every single wave or footprint that I'm tracking outside of wave 1 was discovered because of victim attacks. Not only can you help yourself by telling me or others or reporting that your addresses were ones that were part of this vulnerability, and you can, because you can, I'll give every single person that comes, I'm pretty backed up on DMs, but like a fulsome forensic report you can use for those filings. But also your reports help us identify new attacks, and we are sharing those attacker addresses with all law enforcement and crypto exchanges and et cetera, relevant personnel. So your reports help others as well. So I know it hurts and it's sickening. I've had Bitcoin stolen from me before, not this time, but in the past, and I know that gut-wrenching feeling. But you can do a mitzvah and help others, not just yourself. But you should help yourself. Please do come forward. I'm willing to be the place you come forward to. I found myself in this position. I will not stop till every person is responded to and helped. So please come forward, or to anyone else that is offering help, and many are in the ecosystem. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a little early to figure this out. Preliminary conversations have gone out on how to do this. PubKey wants to be involved in some sort of like mitigation for victims. I know OpenSAS is thinking about this. We're still in the emergency, but when the time is right, if you have ideas on how to set this up and establish it, if you want to contribute, there should be some sort of rescue fund for, you know, these folks, like Alex mentioned, that lost life savings thinking that they were doing things in the absolute most hardcore, privacy-preserving and secure way. It's a travesty. However, I think there's another reason to do this. I think Bitcoin's going to come out a lot stronger after this. I think with the effects of the red team, with the call to action, and because of that benefit comes from, you know, the cold cards that died. It's kind of like the Bone Temple, if you've seen the Bone Temple 28 years later. And also, if you want to donate your cold card to PubKey, I want to build a cold card memorial.
Don't give your cold card away if it generated a seed that had funds
Correct,
stolen.
correct,
to be clear,
correct.
If you had a cold card that you didn't use, you could donate it to PubKey.
Yeah, if you don't have a documented loss that you're aware of and you have a cold key, let's build that Bone Temple here.
Yeah.
If you do, again, save everything you have.
Here we go. You brought your
Let's go. Let's go.
Shout out to the Mug Club. The muggers are the best. No, I'm being serious. The Bitcoin will come out stronger. And we cannot forget the people that lost so much, that created the catalyst to come out stronger. It's a really terrible event. We can learn a lot from this, and I have hope, but it's a very sad hope right now, because we're still in the midst of people figuring out that hopefully they arrive at the fact that it's just money, and it's definitely not worth a human life. But these are dark days, and I think we have much brighter days ahead. So, on that note, I want to thank you guys so much for being here, for the work that you've done. It's a really touching thing, the way that the community came together, and especially leaders in the space, just decide with families and kids, young kids, not to go to sleep for 7 days. Rob, you got to take care of yourself. Far too important. And for everybody being here, thank you so much. And you got friends here, you got community here. And for folks that weren't here, reach out to them. Make sure if they were impacted, they're doing okay. We got a strong future ahead.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you to PubKey.
Yeah, thanks, PubKey.
Thank you, PubKey.
Let's go.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
We'll see you soon with a much cheerier episode of Bitcoin programming at PubKey.
Next up, Michael Saylor.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, if you had your money in Stretch, not too bad.